Hello, everybody. Today is October 2nd, 2020. It's a Friday, and I just want to share some dreams that I had and just talk about some things. So, I wish I could have found it, but some time ago, I had a dream that what happened was I was in bed and I was sleeping very hard. And I had a dream about my brother. And my brother is a pastor of a very conventional church, and he's not a bad person, but I guess he just, for whatever reason, is kind of church oriented. And that being church oriented, it doesn't really allow you to go against the grain. So you have to kind of preach those things that are palatable to your fellow pastors. You don't want to be out of step with them. So he's kind of mainline, put it like that. So he doesn't really know anything about how close we are to the end, that we're in the tribulation, that Obama's the Antichrist. He doesn't know any of that stuff. So anyways, in my dream, he was saying, there's a tornado coming. There's a tornado coming. And then I heard, he said that, and then I heard a voice that I knew was like an angel standing behind me. And I knew I was in my bed. So I knew I was dreaming. And there was more that happened with my brother that made him say that there was a tornado, but it involves his personal life, so I'm not going to share that. But somehow I guess he was seeking the Lord, or the Lord was letting him know that things were bad, that it was later than what he thought. So he was saying, there's a tornado, there was a tornado. He was talking to his wife. And then, like I said, next I was aware that I was dreaming, and that I was laying in my bed, and that I was sleeping, and an angel was near, and it said 2 times, very sternly, it said, there's a tornado coming. There's a tornado coming. Get on your knees and pray. Get on your knees and pray. And I was thinking, well, I need to get in the basement. That's what I said after my brother said it. But, because I was thinking, okay, well, if this horrible storm is coming, and it was like it was imminent, like the black clouds were approaching. And that's the way my brother was saying, there's a tornado coming, there's a tornado coming. And then I was thinking, well, I need to do something. We need to go in the basement. So I was trying to get up because I knew I was in my bed. I knew I was asleep. So I'm trying to will myself awake to go down in the basement. And then just when I was thinking, well, we need to do something, I need to get in the basement, that's when the angel was saying, get on your knees and pray. Get on your knees and pray. And then I was, okay, that's the preparation. There's a storm coming, but it's not the type of storm that you hide from in the basement. It's the type of storm that the preparation is prayer. All right, so then I continued dreaming that my brother came over and I was trying to tell him about the dream. I was dreaming that he came over after I dreamed this, and then I was trying to tell him. But there were just distractions. People kept interrupting. It was just interrupted, and I couldn't tell him. So I knew from when I had that dream, I wish I could remember when it was. It's maybe been like 2 months. And I said, okay, I know that there's a storm coming. I'm like bad, the worst storm ever. And it was urgent to be in prayer, to pray like never before, to just hide like Noah went in the ark, and the ark was his safety. So prayer, I knew, was the safe place, was the way that you prepare and build the ark. And so, but do you know that as urgent as I knew that was, I didn't. I prayed a little bit more, but nothing like the urgency that this dream impressed upon me. So, like I'm fooling around. I was fooling around. And I kind of began to have dreams of that theme where I was fooling around. So, finally, continuously having those dreams, and as like those couple months have gone by, I was like, okay, I need to get serious. And then I started like seeing that theme everywhere. There's a storm coming. There's a storm coming. And I was like, okay, I got to really get serious, because I was having great opposition to fasting and praying. Like not being able to finish my fast and just being distracted in prayer and having prayer be a chore instead of there's a song that they used to sing in the church that I used to go to back when there was church. I'm not talking about this year. This foolishness that they call church was stopped. That's a good thing. I'm talking about like back 10 years ago, 15 years ago. And there was church, saints, but those saints have begun to die off. And there's nothing left but just a few scragglers from the generation before the war babies, the after the war babies, the baby boomers, the so-called baby boomers. And the baby boomers are the generation that Jesus talked about, the generation that sees all these things that he talked about in Matthew chapter 24. That generation will not pass away, before all those things will be fulfilled. And that's the baby boomers. The baby boomers saw all those things. They saw the fulfillment of all those things that Jesus talked about in Matthew 24. That's the generation that will be alive, that won't pass off the scene before the coming of the Lord. But the generation before them, their parents, they're passing off the scene. I mean, they're basically gone and going fast. There'll, be a few scragglers, but this baby boomers, this is the generation that's seen everything from the end of the Second Great War until now, where all of these changes have taken place, where the New World Order the plans began to come alive. So they saw all the changes in society that have led us to this monstrosity that we have now for a society. They went from rural people, glory to God, whose parents didn't even graduate from high school. It was nothing for people to have a 6th or an 8th grade education, and that was considered fine because they knew how to read, write, and do arithmetic. And they had much more sound fundamentals of those things than children who graduate from 12th grade have now, because there was much less foolishness in the schools. But nonetheless, they were taught the poor reading method and the sabotage from the schools, wasting children's time. So they were the beginning of that. Anyway, let me stay on track. So they're the generation that's not going to pass off the scene before all these things be fulfilled. And so you know how old the baby boomers are now? The oldest of the official baby boomers are like 75 years old. They'll be 75 years old in 2021. In January 2021, the people who officially qualify as baby boomers will be 75. They'll be turning 75. So from the 75 range to the 65 range is officially solidly that group, and then a little bit on each side of it. So that's pretty close to the end. I hope you see what I'm saying about the baby boomers. So I didn't really prepare. I knew that it was time to pray. I knew that this was the storm. It was time to pray. Didn't do it. So, like I said, my dreams started kind of being like more having a theme of me fooling around and like warning and stuff like that. So I knew something was wrong. And I just started having more and more trouble staying focused, writing my dreams down, praying, completing a fast. This is the storm. This is the beginning of the storm. It's greater opposition. And like birth pangs, it'll get greater and greater and greater and greater until it ends. And the way to prepare for that and to equalize things back out is to be prepared by prayer, fasting, and keeping your mind on the Lord. And I mean keeping your mind stayed on the Lord, literally. Psalms chapter 1. Where it says, I think it's chapter 1. Yes. Blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Also, thinking about that verse, time to withdraw yourself from all ungodly associations. I don't care if it's children, parents, whoever. If they're a bad influence, if they are ungodly, atheistic, worshiping the world, worshiping the beast, worshiping the image of the beast. They stay on their phone all day. They watch ungodly things. Withdraw yourself from them. Even their conversation will corrupt you. The Bible says evil communication corrupts good manners. It's time to withdraw and go into the ark. Prayer. It's time to really not care. They're going to call you unfriendly. They're going to call you whatever. But just politely withdraw yourself. And I've had to do that. So verse 2 says, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night. We have to get to the place where we take the Lord at his word. This word is life. All that other stuff that they're talking, these fake, lukewarm Christians, it's all just compromise. And it won't get you over. It's a ship with a hole in it. It won't survive the storm. It will not survive the storm. And they'll tell you it is like they'll just make fun of you. They've been doing that forever since with me. Different people who feel like they're walking with the Lord and they're not at all. Oh, look at you. People say things like this to people like us. Oh, look, these people think they're so deep. They think they're so deep. You got to get a rescue crew and a flashlight and dig 10 feet under to find them. As if meditating on the Lord's law day and night is not something that you should do when it's clearly in the Bible. They have their own way that they've established, that they call it following the Lord. They go about to establish their own righteousness. It's not of God. The Bible describes what we're to be, and it validates us. It doesn't validate the things that they're doing, the things that were in your heart to constantly be thinking about the Lord, and those things that they want to say, oh, you're doing too much, you're overly deep, but the Word backs us up. The Word condemns them, but it backs us up. So trust in the Word. Don't look at the storm that's going on around you. Glory to God. Verse 3 says, and he shall be planted, and he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water, that bringeth forth his fruit in his season. His leaf also shall not wither, and whatsoever he doeth shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind driveth away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knoweth the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. I had a thought some time ago, a few weeks ago, that at this time right now, the people who are going to endure are the people who are willing to be 1 in 1,000. You're willing to be one person against 10,000 people. Then it doesn't matter to you what is said about you. Those are the people that's going to make it. Crowd followers, they're going to drift away. They're going to drift away in the storm. Okay. All right. So on September 7th, still in this time of struggling, I was praying and I asked God, what's going on? Because I hadn't had any dreams about the end time lately. And part of that was because I really hadn't been praying and seeking the Lord the way I was told to. Just being caught up by the storm that's even on its way, the beginnings of it, that are just seeking to blow away our focus and blow us off our course. So that had already started. So, I wasn't hadn't dreamed about anything like that lately. Like I said, my dreams had turned to like me fooling around and stuff like that. So instantly, as soon as I asked, Lord, what's going on? Where are we? And as soon as I asked that, I instantly got a complete sense of Obama. I instantly got his essence, his aroma. It was just everywhere. That's what's going on. And then I wrote, he's the storm that's coming. He's the storm that's coming. So I want to read Acts chapter 27 to you. All right. I read from the King James Version, Acts chapter 27. All right, now Paul has been converted, filled with the Holy Ghost, and he began to testify about Jesus Christ after being a persecutor of the church. Then he when Paul was first being introduced to the church, they didn't trust him because they knew him, and his reputation was one that went out and hunted down Christians and sent them to sent them to Jerusalem to be executed by the chief priests and the elders of the people. Because the Jews largely rejected Christ. They refused to believe he was their Messiah. They were content to have their position in Rome rather than having the knowledge and embracing the fact that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had finally visited them. They hadn't heard anything since Malachi. They hadn't heard anything since the rebuilding of the temple. In the time 70 years after the Babylonian captivity, which was probably 400 years before this. So imagine that. It was just like when they were in Egypt. They hadn't heard from the Lord since they went in there. And when Moses came, their deliverer, they believed him and recognized him. So this was the beginning. But now, and there was a degradation from Abraham to on through the history of the Hebrew people. There's been this degradation of faith. First there was Abraham, who was the father of faith, all kinds of faith. And then by the time 430 years went by, a little more, from Abraham until them being in Egypt, maybe about 500 years, and to the delivering from Egypt. And they were not like Abraham anymore, but better than they would go on to degenerate into. So then by the time they were led by Moses, and then they refused to go into the promised land. So here's this, they've changed. And then they were led, because they refused to go into the promised land, they were led by judges for 450 years. And they constantly disobeyed the Lord during that time. Then they asked for a king. And they constantly disobeyed the Lord through the kings. And then finally, because of that, they got led into the captivity of Babylon. The captivity lasted 70 years. And then at the end of those 70 years, the Lord sent them back into the land to rebuild Jerusalem. They built the temple. It took them 46 years. The Lord was with them, but they had trouble. That's where that prophecy was fulfilled, that they would rebuild the temple in troublous times. From Daniel. So a lot of the things that they're trying to claim are happening now, this Zionistic movement to establish the country that is known as Israel now, the nation, that's not the fulfillment of God. That's man. And it's devilish. They're trying to say that rebuilding the temple in troublous times is now. Nah. That was already fulfilled. Read Ezra, Nehemiah, Nehemiah, and Zephaniah. And you'll see all the trouble that they had during the time that they were trying to build the temple. They were stopped for years. They had to build with their tools in one hand and a sword in another hand, because they were beset by the enemies, by their enemies all around. Because the lands of Samaria in the northern kingdom, when they were emptied out of the northern kingdom, people of other nations came in. And those people didn't want to see Jerusalem rebuilt. Anyway, so by the time they rebuilt the temple, it took them 46 years. And then when the kings of Persia were conquered by the Greeks, Alexander the Great, then during that time, from the end of the Persian kingdom to the Romans conquering the Greeks, there was nothing. There's none of the books of the Bible were written in that space. Nothing. Quiet. Nothing. That's the longest time, aside from the time in Egypt, that there was nothing from the Lord. And you would have thought that they would have been refreshed, like from a fresh spring, and being visited by the Lord. The Lord has visited his people. But instead they rejected it. Because from Abraham to Egypt to the kingdoms of the kings, and then into the captivity in Babylon and the rebuilding, they had continued to slide down, and the hearts were growing grosser and darker, so that they rejected him altogether. They received Moses because the darkness wasn't as great. But by the time it came around 2,000 years ago, horrible. And now forget about it. Forget it. The hearts are so hard. So this is where Paul comes in. Paul was part of that group that just refused to believe that the Messiah had come. They just set straight out to kill him. Refused to even consider. They had made up their own way they were following God. And it was through all their rules and all the things they had added on, their additives to the law, to the point where they were diametrically opposed to the law. So this is who Paul was, and God converted Paul. Paul was converted miraculously, and he began to follow the Lord. And the disciples of Jesus didn't trust Paul at first. They were like, no, Lord. That's the guy that's been killing everybody. The Bible says he made havoc of the church. He was the most zealous Christian hunter there was. But he did it ignorantly. The leaders of the people did it. They recognized who Jesus was. They just didn't want to change. They just didn't want to give up their position they had in Rome. They loved the world. They loved money. They loved influence. They loved the praise of the people. They loved being called Rabbi, Rabbi. But Paul just really didn't believe that he was the Christ. But when he found out that he was, he changed completely. He was converted and filled with the Holy Ghost. And he immediately began to go to the synagogues and to preach that Jesus is the Christ and trying to convince the other people who were just like him. No, we got it wrong. He really is Jesus. Jesus really is the Messiah. He fulfills all the scriptures. And he went there, and in the power and might of the Holy Spirit, he convinced many, but many he wasn't able to convince. And so the people didn't trust Paul at first, the disciples that were disciples before him. But the Lord told one named Ananias from Damascus, he told him to go pray for Paul that he might receive his sight and be filled with the Holy Ghost. And that disciple said, no, Lord, I heard about him. He's a killer. He said, no, he's praying, and I've told him what great things he must suffer for my name's sake and be a witness for me. Great things. And so Paul suffered, and he embraced his suffering because, and it was his glory was his suffering. He was happy to suffer for Jesus. He said, I'm not only willing to be delivered to the Romans, but I'm willing to die. When they were trying to warn him, because it was prophesied, Paul, bonds and persecutions await you if you go to Jerusalem. He said, no, I'm willing to go. Not just to be bound, but to die also for my Savior. So this is this Paul who wrote so many of these letters that became our New Testament. So here's Paul. He's been arrested unjustly. And he's being persecuted by the Jews in the same way that he was a persecutor. And for the same reason, because he testified of Jesus Christ, that he is the Son of God and the only way. And that all men need to repent. So he's arrested. And the Jews try to beat him to death. And then, in order to keep from being delivered to them, because they wanted to kill him, he was forced to ask for a trial in front of Caesar. And so while he was being transported to Rome, he was placed on a ship as a prisoner with other prisoners. And a centurion named Julius was the one who had charge over Paul and the prisoners. And they boarded a ship to take him to Rome. So this is the story of what happened when they boarded the ship. Now he's already suffered beatings and all kinds of stuff. Been beaten and left for dead. Been stoned for testifying to the Jews that Jesus was the Christ. So this is what happened, Acts chapter 27. And when it was determined that we should sail into Italy, they delivered Paul and certain other prisoners unto one named Julius, a centurion of Augustus' band. And entering into a ship of Adramyttium, we launched, meaning to sail by the coast of Asia, one Aristarchus, a Macedonian of Thessalonica, being with us. And the next day we touched at Sidon, and Julius courteously entreated Paul, and gave him liberty to go unto his friends, and to refresh himself. And when we had launched from thence, we sailed under Cyprus, because the winds were contrary. And when we had sailed over the sea of Cilicia and Pamphylia, we came to Myra, a city of Lycia. And there the centurion found a ship of Alexandria sailing into Italy, and he put us therein. And when we had sailed slowly many days, and scarcely were come over against Cyndius, the winds not suffering us, we sailed under Crete, and over against Salmone. Now, it says we sailed slowly because the winds were blowing against the ship, so that they could hardly move in the direction they wanted to go. So, verse 8. And hardly passing it, came under a place which is called the Fair Havens, nigh whereunto was the city of Lycia. Now, when much time was spent, and when sailing was now dangerous, because the fast was now already past, Paul admonished them, and said unto them, Sirs, I perceive that this voyage will be with much hurt and much damage, not only of the lading and ship, but also of our lives. So they're trying to make this journey on this ship from Alexandria to get to Italy. But they are having a hard time because of the time of year that it was. It was the time of storms in the ocean, where you didn't try to make these type of voyages. So Paul is telling them, listen, this voyage is going to be, this is a bad idea. We're going to not just endanger the cargo and the ship, but our lives. Verse 11. Nevertheless, the centurion believed the master and the owner of the ship more than those things which were spoken by Paul. It's like, when I saw that, I thought about how now we're trying to tell people what's going on. Don't fall for these riots. Don't believe this COVID stuff is lies. But they believe the news than they believe us. They'd rather believe the people telling them everything's going to be okay than hear somebody saying, oh, gloom and doom and fear. Now we're going to see. We're going to see who's right. Verse 12. And because the haven was not commodious to winter in, the more part advised to depart thence also. So, this place called the Fair Havens wasn't a good spot for winter. They wanted to get to warmer places. They didn't want to, because like I said, it was the season where there are storms in the Mediterranean, and they were coming up on that time. That's why it says, because the fast was now already past. So that's letting you know what time of year it was. So Paul was trying to get them to just wait there in that place. Even though it's not good weather in the wintertime, it's kind of like, you'd rather be in Florida than in Michigan come January. Trust me, I know. So they'd rather believe that good news. No, we can make it. Let's go. But Paul was telling them, it's a bad idea. This is not the time to travel. So, because they didn't want it to be true, they chose not to believe Paul. And they were saying, most people were saying, no, come on, let's go. And then it says, if by any means they might attain to Phoenice and there to winter. They were trying to get to a better spot to spend the cold months. And to winter there, which is a haven of Crete, and lieth toward the southwest and northwest. And when the south wind blew softly, supposing they had obtained their purpose, loosing thence, they sailed close by Crete. So now they had a couple of good days of good weather, because that south wind seemed to be with them, bringing up the warmer air. But it was just like what we call it, an Indian summer day. It wasn't going to last. So they thought, okay, this is a sign. This is a good sign. We can make it before it gets too cold. But they couldn't. So loosing thence, so they set sail off from the Fair Havens to try to make it to Phoenice. Verse 14. But, not long after, there arose against it a tempestuous wind called Euroclydon. Now, Euroclydon is hurricane force winds that are in the fall and the winter in the Mediterranean. Horrible storms. Hurricane force storms out over the water. They're deadly. And when the ship was caught and could not bear up in the wind, we let her drive. So in other words, the winds were so horrible that there was no sense trying to steer the ship at all. So you take down the sails, because the sails will blow your ship over, catching the wind. So you just take down the sails and let the ship do what it's going to do and see if you can survive it. Verse 16. And running under a certain island, which is called Clauda, we had much work to come by the boat, which when they had taken up, they used helps, undergirding the ship, and fearing lest they should fall into the quicksands, and strake sail, and so were driven. So I guess they were trying to stay close to the shore, but when you're by the shore in a storm, you run the risk of being, bashed up against things. So it's better when there's a storm to be out in the open ocean, so you don't bash up against rocks and get stuck. I guess here it says in the quicksands. I don't know what that all means. But I know when there's a bad storm and you want your ship to survive it, it's best not to be near the shore. Remember how Forrest Gump was the only ship that survived the hurricane, his shrimping boat, because he was out to sea when the storm came. So there's an ideal place to be, and it's not by the shore, because your ship is going to get torn up. So anyway, verse 18. And we, being exceedingly tossed with a tempest, the next day they lightened the ship. So what they did next was throw out the cargo. They jettisoned the cargo, made the ship less heavy to try to keep it from sinking. Verse 19 says, and the third day we cast out with our own hands the tackling of the ship. That's the equipment that they use to keep and run the ship. Now they needed that stuff, so that was, a last resort. And then verse 20 says this, and when neither sun nor stars in many days appeared, and no small tempest lay on us, all hope that we should be saved was taken away. So it was so black and stormy that they saw nothing, not the sun, not the stars, not day or night, for days. But after long abstinence, Paul stood forth in the midst of them, abstinence meaning abstinence from food they hadn't eaten, and said, Sirs, ye should have hearkened unto me, and not have loosed from Crete, and to have gained this harm and loss. He said, y'all should listen to me. We should not have tried to sail to Phoenice. We should have stayed and wintered in that place that wasn't comfortable, that y'all didn't want to stay in. He says, and now I exhort you to be of good cheer, for there shall be no loss of any man's life among you, but of the ship. For there stood by me this night an angel of God, whose I am, and whom I serve, saying, Fear not, Paul, thou must be brought before Caesar. And lo, God hath given thee all them that sail with thee. So he's like, look, Paul, nothing's going to happen to you. You have to fulfill what God has given you to do. And you're not going to die because you're going to fulfill it. The Lord has said that you're going to stand before Caesar. You're going to Rome as a witness. So if you're going to Rome, to stand before Caesar, you cannot die in this storm. And not only that, I'm going to give you, no man from this ship will die either. Verse 25, wherefore, sirs, be of good cheer, for I believe God, that it shall be even as it was told me. Howbeit, we must cast upon a certain island. So he knew that, what was going to happen next. But when the 14th night was come, as we were driven up and down Adria, about midnight, the shipmen deemed that they drew near to some country. Okay, so here they are, still in this storm. This is just a stormy season, this Euroclydon. It was like, being out on the Atlantic during hurricane season, and just storm after storm. And not just normal storms, hurricanes. So the lookout was saying, look, there's some land. Because they weren't even seeing the sun. And they all thought they were going to die. All hope was lost. And all they had was Paul saying, be of good cheer. I guess they didn't believe him until they saw the land. All right. Verse 28. And sounded and found it some 20 fathoms. And when they had gone a little further, they sounded again and found it 15 fathoms. So I guess sounding must be some sort of a process where they can tell how far they are away from the land. Like maybe they send out an echo or something. Something probably works on the same principle as sonar or something like that. But I'm sure it wasn't the technology of sonar, but some kind of way that they had of sending out something, a sound or something. And then based on how long it took the sound to come back, they could estimate how far they were away from this piece of land that they saw. All right. And then verse 29 says, then fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern and wished for the day. See, like I said, you can't get too close to the shore. In the shallow water, more shallow water, it's best to be out at sea in deeper water where you can't be bashed up against anything. Now, of course, there's the danger of the waves, but at least, you have a hope. So it says, fearing lest we should have fallen upon rocks, they cast 4 anchors out of the stern and wished for the day. So they just passed that night just in terror. They set the anchors to keep the ship from going too close to the rocks. Verse 30. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, when they had let down the boat unto the sea, under color, as though they would have cast anchor out of the foreship. Let me read that again. And as the shipmen were about to flee out of the ship, so the crew was about to abandon the ship with their little, little lifeboat. And then it says, under color, as though they would have cast anchors out of the foreship. So, maybe they were trying to sneak and do this and trying to act like they were trying to do something else, but they were really trying to abandon the ship. So Paul said to the centurion and to the soldiers, except these abide in the ship, you cannot be saved. He said, anybody who leaves the ship now. Paul knew this by the Spirit. He didn't know these things naturally, but this is what the angel had told him, how they would be saved. Just stay in the ship. Except ye abide in the ship, you cannot be saved. Except those ones that were trying to escape in the lifeboats, tell them, look, no. They tell them they have to stay in the ship or they won't be saved. So that's like how the angel warned me. Get on your knees and pray. Get on your knees and pray. This was the way to stay safe. This is the way to survive this storm. It has to be, you have to surround yourself like a ship with prayer, fasting, and seeking the Lord. That has to become your abode, abiding in Christ, in Him alone. Not watching the news, that won't help you. Not protesting, that will damn you. Not looking to the government, not looking to an election, not trying to hook back up with your old pastor who didn't know nothing anyway, or all your lukewarm Christian friends. None of that. Just on our knees, trusting God, even though the storm is raging around us. Then the soldiers cut off the ropes of the boat and let her fall. So they listened to them. They're about to throw that boat down, let the boat down and get in it and try to escape. But Paul let them know, nope, listen, you leave this ship, you're going to die. I guess they had come to start to believe Paul now. So they cut the ropes to the ship they were trying to let down and just let it fall into the ground, or let it fall into the water. Verse 33. And while the day was coming on, Paul besought them all to take meat, saying, This day is the 14th day that ye have tarried and continued fasting, having taken nothing. Wherefore I pray you, take some meat, for this is for your health. For there shall not an hair fall from the head of any of you. So Paul believed God. The angel said no one's going to die if you stay in the ship. It's always an if. You got to obey. And when he had thus spoken, he took bread and gave thanks to God in the presence of them all. And when he had broken it, he began to eat. And they were all of good cheer, and they also took some meat. Meat here just means food. And we were in all in the ship 260 souls. So 276 people. And when we had eaten enough, they lightened the ship and cast out the wheat into the sea. So they were carrying also food and stores and provisions. They had already let go of the cargo and some of the equipment for the ship, and now in the last ditch effort they throw out all their stores of food as well to lighten the ship, to help to keep it from sinking. Verse 39, and when it was day, they knew not the land, but they discovered a certain creek with a shore, into the which they were minded, if it were possible, to thrust in the ship. So they saw a piece of land they didn't recognize, and they were going to try to go for it. And when they had taken up the anchors, they committed themselves unto the sea, and loosed the rudder bands, and hoisted up the mainsail to the wind, and made toward shore. So when you're trying to survive a storm, you let go, or you put down the mast, those sails, because the wind will tear them up and tip the ship over and blow you where you don't want to go. So you lessen the resistance. So when they were going to try to make for this land, they put up the sails and they were going to try to steer the ship there. Okay? And falling into a place where two seas met, they ran the ship aground, and the forepart stuck fast and remained unmovable, but the hinder part was broken with the violence of the waves. So they did not make it all the way to the shore, but the ship got stuck in the sands. But not to a place where they could survive. It was still too deep. They hadn't made it to the shore, but they were run aground. All right. But the hinder part was broken up with the violence of the waves. So now the ship has broken apart. And the soldiers' counsel was to kill the prisoners, lest any of them should swim out and escape. Now, that's what you do. Because if you show up to your port of call without your prisoners, Rome will make your life go for the life of the prisoners. If you let your prisoner escape, you die for their life. So that was the incentive to keep the prisoners in custody. Because if he escapes, you die for it. You don't just get fired like we do here. Okay. But the centurion, the guy Julius, willing to save Paul, kept them from their purpose, and commanded that they which could swim should cast themselves first into the sea and get to land. Okay, so try to swim for the shore. And the rest, some on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship. And so it came to pass that they all escaped safe to land. Yay. There was a godly woman, one of the last godly women that I've known, before the church was broken up. She gave a message one night, and she had this verse 44. This story was her text, and this verse 44 was her main focus. The rest, some on boards and some on broken pieces of the ship. And so it came to pass that they all escaped to land. So some people are going to swim in. Okay? They got it down packed. They've been living for the Lord. They don't really have a lot of problems, temptations, or whatever. They just been set up. They've been following the Lord and doing well. And they just swim right on in. But even if you're not that person who got saved and never looked back, you never fail, and you're just not that person. You backslid terribly, and the Lord reclaimed you. Whatever the case may be, if you can't swim, then grab a board. And if you can't find a board, just get one of the things, the ship's torn up, just grab something off the ship. However you get to the shore, it doesn't matter, long as we make it like Jesus said. You might not be that guy that doesn't have any temptation. You might be the guy that has to go like this. Can't watch any TV at all. You got to go like this through the store because of all the stretch pants. You had to, spiritually speaking, pluck your eye out because it was offending you. You can't do all the stuff that other people do. You got to have a tight walk. But it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter how we struggle or what we lose along the way. It's just as long as you make it. It doesn't have to be pretty. Just get it done. That's your Euroclydon. That's not just any old storm. Your Euroclydon. Hurricane force winds. Not just a storm of a day or two, but a whole season of storms. In 2016, I'll link the video. I'm going to write it down so I don't forget. I saw Barack Obama forecast as a storm. He said it was a hurricane. I was watching a newscast in my dream, and the guy said, "Now this particular president," and he was pointing to the little swirl that symbolizes the storm on the map, and he was showing it going up the eastern board of the United States, going up, starting in the Atlantic, going up Florida, up to North Carolina, and all that stuff. He said, "Now this particular president," I thought he was going to say storm, but he said president, and it was Obama. He was talking about Obama. Predicted as a hurricane. I will link the video. And that storm turned out to be Hurricane Matthew that went all the way up to North Carolina. And there hadn't been a storm in the United States that hit the United States in 11 years. Yeah, I think it was the same year of Katrina was the last time that there was a storm like that made landfall while still being categorized as a hurricane. Okay. So now the last scripture I want to read is Matthew. Matthew chapter 14, verse 22. On September 9th, September 9th, oh boy, I got so much more to share, but I'm not going to be able to do it right now. Yeah, on September 7th, that's when then I asked the Lord, I hadn't seen anything about the end times in a long time. And he said, and he didn't say it, but that sense that I got, it was almost like I was breathing in Obama or something. That's how thick the air got with him. And then I knew that he was the storm that's coming. Then I believe it was on the 9th. Beautiful. On September 9th at 8:33 a.m., I woke up to this song being sung to me. It went like this. Day to day, no, how'd it go? Day to day and hour to hour. Female voice sang that part. And then a male voice came and he said, "My son's gonna keep you. And he said, "Don't you know I can keep you? My son's gonna keep you. Don't you know I can keep you?" There's a ship that we can get on. There's an ark. No matter what went on outside that ark, Noah and his sons and their wives and his wife, they were safe in that ark. They were in that ark for a year. 1 year left. This thing is more real than even I can fathom. Even though I've seen it all play out and the Lord has showed all of it to me, I am just astonished. This is like a dream. This is like a dream. This is unbelievable. Oh my gosh. what is happening is just unreal. The Bible is much more real than the stuff that's happening out there. Amen. So day to day and hour to hour, my son's going to keep you. Don't you know I can keep you? Don't you know I can keep you? We can trust God. We can, out of all the things that we've been told to put our trust in, everything failed. Everything failed. But that book, the Bible, it will not fail. That is something you can trust in. People trust in paper. That paper they're trying to get, those coins. But that book, better than silver and gold, it's the words of eternal life. Eternal life. What will a man give in exchange for a soul? You hold on to that book. Keep your mind on Christ Jesus, whose name happens to be Yeshua. But we're so used to calling him Jesus. It's okay. But just know that's his name. Yeshua HaMashiach. Yeshua the Savior, the Messiah. He's the Son of God. He's the only way. He's the ship. He's the ark. He's everything. And he's the only thing. Don't trust in anything else. So I'm going to read Matthew chapter 14. I'm going to start at verse 22. And straightway Jesus constrained his disciples to get into a ship and to go before him unto the other side, while he sent the multitude away. And when he had sent the multitude away, he went up into a mountain apart to pray. Now, this is something we got to do. You got to get apart to pray. And when the evening was come, he was there alone. But the ship was now in the midst of the sea, tossed with the waves, for the wind was contrary. And in the fourth watch of the night, Jesus went unto them walking on the sea. And when the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were troubled, saying, It is a spirit. And they cried out for fear. But straightway Jesus spake unto them, saying, Be of good cheer. It is I. Be not afraid. But Peter answered him and said, Lord, if it be thou, bid me come unto thee on the water. And he said, Come. And Peter was come down out of the ship. He walked on the water to go to Jesus. But when he saw the wind boisterous, he was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried, saying, Lord, save me. And immediately Jesus stretched forth his hand and caught him, and said unto him, O thou of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And when they were come into the ship, the wind ceased. And then they that were in the ship came and worshipped him, saying, Of a truth, thou art the Son of God. In Isaiah chapter 26, there's some scriptures that I want to read you. Isaiah chapter 26, verses 1 through 5. In that day shall this song be sung in the land of Judah. Now this is in that great day when we make it. We have a strong city. Salvation will God appoint for walls and bulwarks. Open ye the gates, that the righteous nation which keepeth the truth may enter in. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Trust ye in the Lord forever, for the Lord Jehovah is everlasting strength. That's where we're going to stay. And then verse 5 is what the Lord is going to be doing while we're resting in the ark. For he bringeth down the dwelling, for he bringeth them down that dwell on high, the lofty city. He layeth it low. He layeth it low, even to the ground. He bringeth it even to the dust. God is going to do that. But we'll be safe. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Trust ye in the Lord forever. Trust ye in the Lord forever. For the Lord Jehovah is everlasting strength. There is a beautiful song that I'm going to pin in the comments. This song is just breathtaking. It's sung by an a cappella choir. A couple weeks ago, I told the Lord that I wanted to hear angels singing. A day or so later, I saw this video. And if they don't sound like angels, then the singing of the angels will probably just kill us with the beauty. This song is so amazing. And the only words to this song are those two verses, verse 3 and 4. Thou wilt keep him in perfect peace, whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusteth in thee. Trust in the Lord forever, for in the Lord Jehovah is everlasting strength. Beautiful. I think it's the most beautiful song that I've ever heard. And it just keeps ringing in my soul, reminding me to keep my mind on the Lord. If you're not fasting with us that are fasting, there's been a few people that said they were fasting. Do it. It's been a blessing. It's been a blessing to me. I have so much stuff to share that I've gotten just in these few days. I think it's only been 5 or 6 days, maybe a week. Glory be to God. And the theme of the fast is, Lord, show me what I'm doing wrong. Show me what I'm doing wrong. And he's been showing me so I can fix it. This is preparation time. We got to get ready. The King is coming. And this is for real. This is realer than anything you've ever been through. Our lives have been like a dream until now. That's how real things are right now. God bless you.